The first time I saw the shadows drop across the highway, I thought it was storm clouds moving too fast. I thought it was my mind playing tricks, because I had been on the road since before sunrise. Then the dashboard lights flickered, the radio coughed into static, and every hair on my arms rose like it had heard a warning before my ears did. Ahead of me, a sedan drifted halfway onto the shoulder, as if the driver had suddenly forgotten how to steer. The brake lights flashed, then stayed on. I tightened my grip on the wheel. I kept my truck steady. I told myself it was nothing, just a power line buzzing, just fatigue, just the world being the world. And then a shape slid out of the sky, silent. Impossible. A chunk of black metal with cold blue lights glowing under its belly. It hovered over the asphalt like it owned the air. My stomach dropped, my throat went dry. And a single word hit my mind with the force of a hammer. Run. I glanced. In my rearview mirror, 2 more shapes drifted down behind me. One to the left over the fields, one to the right over the ditch. Like hunters spreading out to close a net, cars started slowing all around. Confused at first, then panicked. People leaning forward, faces turning upward through windshields. Mouths moving in questions I could not hear through glass. One of the hovering objects rolled slightly, and a beam of pale light swept the road. Not a spotlight exactly, more like a scanning glare that made the air shimmer. My truck's engine stuttered, caught again, stuttered, as if it was arguing with something that had just grabbed its throat. I slapped the accelerator. The engine growled, and for one blessed second, the truck surged forward. That was when something moved in the passenger side footwell. I did not have a passenger. I had not since I left the truck stop 40 miles back. I had not picked anyone up. I had not even opened the passenger door. The movement was fast, controlled, like someone trying not to be noticed. I glanced sideways and my heart stopped. A woman was curled there, folded tight, as if she had poured herself into the smallest space she could find. Her skin the color of deep ocean. Her eyes huge and green and terrified, her long blue hair tangled, like it had been torn free by wind or hands. On her head, even in that cramped darkness, an ornate silver tiara caught the weak light and threw it back in sharp flashes, blue gemstones glinting like trapped stars. She looked up at me with the expression of someone who had just realized the last door in a burning building was locked. Her lips parted, her chest rose once, twice, as if she was fighting to breathe quietly. I should have slammed the brakes. I should have screamed. I should have swerved into the ditch. Instead, I heard my own voice come out steady and low, like it belonged to someone braver than me. "Who are you?" she swallowed, her eyes flicking to the sky, then back to me. "Do not stop," she whispered, and her accent was musical, strange, like every word carried a history I could not understand. "Do not stop or they will take me," I said, keeping my eyes on the road, trying to make sense of the hovering machines closing in, trying not to think about the fact that an alien royal, a literal alien royal, was hiding in my truck. Her fingers gripped the edge of the seat, knuckles tight, and I realized her hands were trembling, not with weakness, but with fury held down by fear. "My guard," she said, and her voice cracked on the last word like it hurt her to say it. "Your guard is doing this?" I asked. The truck shuddered again as the beam swept past. The engine flinched. I slammed the accelerator harder, and the truck responded like an old fighter refusing to go down. She shook her head, a quick, desperate motion. "Not my guard, not anymore," she whispered. "They wear my crest, but they do not serve my heart." A car ahead of me spun out suddenly, tires squealing, then stopped dead in the middle of the lane. The driver's door flew open, and a man stumbled out, arms up, yelling at the sky. A beam touched him, and he froze like someone had hit a pause on his body. I tasted metal in my mouth. My hands went cold, and I knew with absolute certainty that if that beam touched me, my story ended right there on that empty stretch of asphalt. The blue woman pressed herself flatter, eyes wide, voice urgent. "Please?" she said. "Please," faster. That one word in her mouth did something to me. It cut through fear and hit something older. Something simple. Someone is trapped. Someone is asking. So I did what I have always done when something breaks down on the side of the road. I kept moving and started thinking. I scanned the highway, the fields, the horizon, looking for anything that could help. A bridge, a culvert, a line of trees, anything that could block a scan beam for a second. But the land was open and flat. A straight ribbon of road stitched across pale grass. Nothing to hide behind, nowhere to disappear. I reached for the radio out of habit and got nothing but screaming static. No stations, no voices, just a harsh wall of noise that made my teeth vibrate. The woman flinched at the sound, then whispered, "They are jamming you." "Who are you?" I asked again, more sharply this time, because I needed something solid to hold on to, a name, a reason. She hesitated, as if giving it away would paint a target on my chest. Then she lifted her chin, and for a heartbeat, the fear on her face was pushed aside by something like pride. Like duty. "I am Nera," she said. "Neri of the Lumen Throne." The words meant nothing to me, yet they landed like weight. Like a title that had been spoken in halls far bigger than my world. "Lumen Throne," I repeated. She nodded once fast, like we did not have time for disbelief. "You would call me Queen," she said softly, and her eyes held mine for a fraction of a second. And in that instant I saw exhaustion behind the fear. Like she had been running for days. "A queen," I said, and my voice finally cracked, because my brain could not keep pretending this was normal. Another craft dropped lower ahead, now 4 of them, maybe 5, forming a loose ring over the highway. Their lights pulsing, their bodies shifting like they were adjusting to wind that did not exist. The air pressure changed, my ears popped. The truck's windows vibrated, and every instinct in me screamed to stop, to surrender to whatever technology had just walked into my life like a nightmare. Neri whispered, "They will not kill you. Human, not quickly, not if they believe you saw me. They will study you, take your mind apart, take your memories, and throw your body away when it is empty." My throat tightened. "Human," I repeated, and the word sounded so small in her mouth, like a label on a jar. "How do you know what I am?" I asked. "Because your kind is loud," she said. And for a moment, something almost like humor flickered at the edge of her terror. "Your signals, your broadcasts, your music. You leak your heart into the dark." The highway ahead was now blocked by something I could barely process. A line of armored vehicles, not human vehicles. Sleek black forms hovering a foot above the asphalt, arranged sideways like a barricade. Between them stood figures, tall, armored, helmets smooth and featureless, rifles held like extensions of their arms. They were waiting for me. They had built a trap in minutes. My foot eased off the accelerator without me deciding to, because what do you do when the road becomes a wall? Neri's hand shot up and grabbed my forearm, her grip surprisingly strong, her voice sharp enough to slice through the roar of blood in my ears. "Do not stop." I stared at the barricade, my mind racing, my eyes flicking to the shoulder, to the ditch, to the open field. There was a narrow gap on the right where the asphalt crumbled into dirt, just wide enough to squeeze through if I had the nerve and if the truck did not roll. I swung the wheel, the tires hit gravel, the truck lurched, the suspension screamed, and we shot off the road into the field. The truck bounced hard, my teeth snapped together. The steering wheel kicked in my hands like a wild animal. Behind me, I heard the hiss of energy, saw a bright streak flash past the rear window, and the air smelled suddenly like burned plastic. They fired. My fear turned into anger so hot it steadied my hands. "No," I muttered, "not today, not on my road." The field was uneven, dotted with shallow dips and clumps of dry grass. My truck was not made for off-road heroics. But it was tough, it was stubborn, it was mine. Nera braced herself against the dashboard, eyes locked forward, her breathing fast but controlled, like she had been trained for terror. A craft slid lower above us, close enough that I could see seams in its metal skin, symbols etched along its side, lights pulsing like a heartbeat. A beam dropped, trying to pin us, and my engine coughed. The truck slowed, fighting an invisible hand. I felt it then, not in my mind but in the air, like pressure squeezing the truck from above, like the world itself was telling my machine to kneel. Nerai hissed, "They are taking control. Do something." I snapped, then instantly regretted it, because she was the one hunted and I was the one with hands on the wheel. But fear makes you cruel for no reason. Instead of flinching, she did something that changed everything. She lifted her hand, palm open, and spoke a phrase in her language, the words flowing fast and sharp, not a prayer, not a plea, a command. The tiara's gemstones flared, blue light spilling across the cab. For half a second, the truck's engine went silent. My dashboard went black. My heart froze. Then the engine roared back to life, louder than before. Not louder in sound, but louder in presence, as if something inside it had been lit. The invisible pressure snapped like a rope. The truck surged forward, and the beam missed us by inches, cutting a glowing line through the grass behind. I stared at Nerai, breath punching out of me. "What did you do?" She swallowed, her face pale beneath blue skin. "I spoke to their system," she whispered, and pain flickered in her eyes as if it cost her something. "The Crown is keyed to their networks. It was built to command my fleet." "Your fleet," I said, driving hard, the fields blurring. "The highway now a distant line to our left, not mine anymore," she replied, voice tight. "It was stolen from my blood." The crafts shifted, regrouping, and I realized we were being herded, pushed away from towns, away from exits, away from anything that could help. They wanted us isolated. They wanted no witnesses, no interference, just clean capture. My mind raced through options like a mechanic flipping through tools, none of them good. I had a phone, useless. I had a truck, vulnerable. I had a stranger queen in my passenger seat, hunted by her own guard. I had one advantage, I was human. And humans are good at ugly solutions. I scanned the horizon and saw something that made pulse jump, a distant line of wind turbines, tall white shapes turning slowly. Beneath them, access roads, maintenance sheds, maybe a substation, metal, wires, power, places where electromagnetic fields might be loud enough to confuse alien scanning. "Hold on," I said, and my voice came out rough. "We are going there." Nerai followed my gaze, and for the first time since I saw her, hope flickered across her face like sunlight breaking through cloud. "Noise," she breathed. Yes, their scanners will hate that." A craft dropped lower again, another beam swept. And Nerai lifted her hand once more, but her fingers shook now, her breath hitched. "You cannot do that forever," I said. "No," she whispered. "It is pulling on my nerves, on my mind. The Crown is not meant to fight its own army." I gritted my teeth, pushed the truck harder, the ground jarring my bones. Behind us, the drones, the armored figures, the betrayal in metal and light. Ahead of us, the turbines, the only cover in a world too open. As we neared the first turbine, the air changed again, a faint hum, a vibration you feel more than hear. The crafts wobbled slightly, not much, but enough to tell me they were not perfect. Their beams flickered, then steadied, then flickered again. "Good," I muttered. Come on." We hit the maintenance road, gravel spraying, and I aimed straight toward the substation. A grid of fencing and transformers, warning signs, thick cables running like veins. The first energy shot from the craft hit the ground beside us and blew a chunk of dirt into the air. The shockwave slapped the truck, the cab rocked. Nerai cried out as her head hit the seat. I felt something inside me snap from fear to fury, and I shouted a word I did not even know I had: nitrogen monoxide. I drove straight at the fence. The chain link rushed toward us, and for a split second, my brain begged me to turn away. Then the truck smashed through, metal screeching, wire snapping, sparks exploding like fireworks across the hood. The engine coughed, almost died, then kept going, stubborn as a heartbeat. Inside the fenced yard, the hum grew louder. The air smelled like ozone. The crafts above us dipped, lights blinking, their formation breaking like birds startled by gunfire. One of them fired again, and the shot went wild, striking a transformer. The world turned white. A blast of light and sound ripped through the yard. A deep, violent boom that shook my ribs. The truck lurched. The dashboard went dead. The radio went silent. Then everything, absolutely everything, became quiet in a way that felt unnatural, like the world held its breath. I coasted to a stop between massive metal boxes, steam rising from somewhere, sparks dripping from torn wires. For a moment I did not move. I just sat there listening to my own pulse. Nerai's hand was still on my arm, her grip tight, her nails digging through fabric. Outside, the crafts hovered uncertainly. Their lights dimmer now, their beams gone. Did we do it? I whispered. Nerai stared up through the windshield, eyes wide, voice barely a breath. We blinded them, she said. Not forever, but long enough to run. I swallowed, glanced at my dead dashboard. The truck is dead, I said. She closed her eyes for a second, and I saw her shoulders shake once, like she was trying not to fall apart. Then she opened her eyes and looked at me with something fierce, something royal, something that made my fear feel ashamed. Then we walk, she said. Walk where I asked. She turned her head, listening, as if she could hear things beyond my range. To the tower, she said, and pointed toward the tallest turbine, the one whose blades turned slow and steady above the chaos. There is a control room. There will be a signal uplink, something simple, old, local. We can use it to call someone who still serves me. You have someone? I asked. Her lips tightened. I have one, she said, and pain flashed in her eyes. One who did not betray. One who hid me in your world when the knives came out in my palace. Another sound rolled over the yard, low like a drum. The crafts were recovering, shifting, tightening their circle again. I opened my door, and the wind hit my face, cold and dry, carrying the smell of scorched metal. I stepped out, and for the first time in my life, I looked up at alien machines handing over my land like they had always owned it, and I felt anger rise like a tide. Nerai climbed out after me, unsteady, her scarf fluttering, tiara still shining. And when she stood there in the dust beside my battered truck, she looked less like a fugitive and more like a symbol, like a question the universe had finally asked us directly. We ran, not heroic movie running, not graceful, just desperate sprinting across gravel and torn grass. Behind us, shots hissed, dirt jumped, a warning more than an attempt, like they wanted us alive, like they wanted Nerai intact. We reached the turbine's base, a thick door set into the concrete, locked. I yanked it. Nothing. Nerai pressed her palm to the keypad and spoke again. And this time the keypad sparked and died, but the lock clicked open anyway. Inside was a narrow staircase spiraling upward, metal steps, a hum in the walls. We climbed, breath burning, legs shaking, my hands grabbing rails, her hands steadying herself. Halfway up, she stumbled, and I caught her without thinking. Her body light and tense, her breath hot against my shoulder. For a second she looked at me like she could not understand why I touched her gently instead of shoving her onward. Then her eyes softened, just slightly, on my world. She whispered, kindness is rare when fear is in the room. On my world, I panted. We fix what is broken, because someone has to. We reached the control room. A cramped space with windows looking out over the fields, panels of switches and screens, some still alive on backup power. Outside, the crafts had repositioned, two above the fence, one nearer the turbine, one drifting toward the highway as if cutting off escape routes. Nerai moved to a terminal, fingers flying across unfamiliar buttons with a speed that made my head spin, as if she understood patterns more than labels. Come on, she whispered, come on. A helmeted figure rose into view outside the window. Not walking, floating, a platform beneath its feet, rifle aimed. My body reacted before my mind. I grabbed a heavy wrench from a maintenance shelf, held it like a club. The figure fired, not a lethal shot. A pulse that struck the glass. The window flared blue, held, then cracked. Nerai's head snapped up, her eyes blazing, and she shouted a word that made the air vibrate. The tiara flared again, brighter, and the floating platform outside jerked, spun, slammed into the turbine side. The armored figure tumbling out of view, Nere swayed, grabbing the console. Breath ragged. "You are burning yourself," I said. She bared her teeth, not in anger at me, but at the sky. "Better burned than owned," she hissed. The console beeped, a small sound, the sweetest sound I have ever heard. "Signal acquired," a robotic voice announced. Nere leaned close, voice trembling with urgency, speaking in her language fast, pouring everything into those words: command, plea, identity, promise. Then she switched, looked at me, and spoke in English again, voice shaking. "If anyone answers," she said, "they will come hot, they will come loud, and the traitors will not stop until they either take me or erase this entire place." "Erase," I repeated, looking out at the open land, thinking of the cars on the highway, the people who had no idea their lives were now pieces in someone else's war. Nere's eyes glittered, and for a moment I saw tears gather, held back by pride. "I did not choose your world," she whispered. "I did not want to bring this here, but I had no sanctuary left. And when the last loyal door closed, the only place they would not expect a queen to hide was among ordinary humans." "Ordinary," I echoed, and something bitter rose in me. Below, another shot struck the turbine. The whole tower shuddered, lights flickered. A voice burst from the console, distorted, urgent, speaking her language, then switching to English with a heavy accent. "Your Majesty," the voice said. Nere's knees nearly buckled. She pressed her forehead to the console like she was trying to hold herself together. "I am here," she whispered. "I am here." The voice answered. "Stay alive, my queen. I am coming outside." The crafts reacted, lights flaring, formation tightening, as if they could feel the shift in the air, as if they could smell the arrival of something that threatened them. Nere turned to me, and in her eyes was terror and hope tangled together like wire. "They will strike now," she said. "They will try to end this before my loyal one arrives." "How long?" I asked. "Minutes," she said, and the word landed like a sentence. The turbine shook again, a deep groan through metal. I looked around the control room. At the narrow door, the cracked window, the wrench in my hand, the queen trembling beside a console. I was a truck driver, not a soldier, not a hero, not a person who belonged in a war between stars. But the war had come anyway, and it had chosen my highway, my hands, my breath. I stepped closer to the window, stared down at the yard, and saw armored figures rising toward the turbine on platforms. 3, 4, maybe more, rifles aimed, moving with patience. Like they knew time was on their side. I heard my own voice, low and steady. "Not today." Nere watched me confused. "What are you doing, human?" she whispered. I turned to her, and I could not explain it with logic. I could only say what felt true. "You came to the wrong species for surrender," I said. Her eyes widened, and something like awe flickered, quickly buried under fear. I grabbed a chair, slammed it against the doorframe, wedged it, then dragged a metal cabinet to block the lower part of the cracked window. Not perfect, not strong, but enough to slow them, enough to buy seconds. Nere watched, breathing hard. Then she moved too, pulling cables, rerouting power. Her hands trembling but precise. "They climb," she said, voice tight. "We shock the staircase. We make them pay for every step." "You can do that?" I asked. She gave me a look that said, "I am a queen. I was raised in a storm." She spoke into the console again, and the turbines hum changed, deeper, louder. A platform outside shot upward, then jerked violently as a pulse ran through the tower's skin. The armored figure convulsing, dropping, then catching itself. Stubborn, relentless. They kept coming. The glass cracked further. A shard fell inward. The wind hissed through. A rifle muzzle appeared at the window edge. A pulse shot through, striking the cabinet, blowing a chunk of metal away. I ducked, ears ringing, heart hammering. Nere cried out, her hand on her tiara, blue light flaring, then dimming, flaring, then dimming, Like a candle fighting wind, she stumbled into me. And I caught her again, and this time she did not resist the support. She leaned into it for one breath. One heartbeat. Do not let them take me, she whispered. And the fear in her voice was not for death. It was for what comes after. I looked at her, at the crown, at the tired bravery. They will have to go through me, I said, and I meant it. A heavy impact hit the door below. The chair shuddered, the cabinet rattled. They were at the control room, Narai's. Eyes locked on mine, wide, desperate. And then she did something I did not expect. She reached up and lifted the tiara off her head, her hands shaking, and she pressed it into my hands. Take it, she said. Take what I stammered. If they grab me, she whispered, they will force it back onto my head and use me like a key. But if you have it, if you run, they cannot fully claim my fleet. They cannot finalize the coup. I stared at the crown, felt its weight, felt a faint vibration like it was alive. I cannot wear this, I said. You do not have to wear it, she snapped. You only have to keep it from them. Another impact hit. The doorframe groaned. The chair splintered. Nere pressed her forehead to mine. Blue skin against my skin. A strange warm contact that felt unbearably human in the middle of alien violence. Listen, she whispered. There is a hatch on the roof. You climb. You run along the maintenance walkway. You jump to the next turbine. You keep moving until my loyal one arrives. And you, I asked, voice breaking. She smiled, small and fierce and heartbreaking. I am not helpless, she whispered. I am just hunted. The door exploded inward. Chair flying, metal screaming. Two armored figures surged into the room, rifles raised. Time slowed into sharp pieces. I grabbed Naraya's scarf and yanked her behind the console. I swung the wrench with everything I had at the first figure's rifle. Metal clanged. The weapon jerked. A pulse shot wide and blasted the ceiling. The second figure lunged. And Nara screamed a word that felt like thunder. The tiara. In my hands flared blue, even though it was not on her head. The armored figure froze for a heartbeat. Just long enough. I drove my shoulder into it. Shoved it backward toward the cracked window. And it slammed into glass that finally gave up. The figure tumbled out, falling, disappearing into open air. The remaining guard raised its rifle at Naraya's hiding place. And something in me went cold and clear. I threw the tiara, not at the guard, but toward the far wall, hard, like a distraction, like a lie. The guard's helmet snapped toward it. Instantly, as if trained to prioritize the crown over everything else, that single moment was enough. Nara rose, eyes blazing, hands out, and the guard's armor sparked, joints locking, the rifle dropping. The figure collapsing to its knees like a puppet whose strings were cut. Nara swayed, her face tight with pain, but she stayed standing. I grabbed the tiara from where it landed, pressed it to my chest, then ran for the roof hatch. Nara shouted. After me, voice fierce, go human. I shoved the hatch open and climbed into the wind. The sky was full of machines, lights pulsing, beams searching, across the turbine tops. Narrow walkways stretched, shaking slightly under wind and vibration. I ran, the metal grating under my boots, my hands gripping railings, the tiara heavy and hot against my ribs. Below, the fields rolled out empty and endless. And somewhere out there civilians were still on the highway, still praying for this to be a dream. A craft angled toward me, lights brightening, beam forming. I felt the air thicken, felt the invisible hand reaching for my body. I kept running. Anyway, because fear does not stop you when you have decided you would rather break than kneel. Behind me, inside the control room, Nara's voice rose again, raw with effort. She was fighting them alone, buying me seconds with pain. The beam swept toward me, and I shouted a word from my gut. Not a plan, not a strategy, just a refusal. Nitrogen monoxide. Then the sky split with a new sound, a roar like an ocean falling from a cliff. A streak of light tore across the clouds, not blue like the traitor craft, but white, pure, sharp. A ship dropped from high altitude so fast it left a trail behind it. like a comet deciding to become a blade. It slammed into the nearest alien craft with a violence that shook the air, metal blossoming outward, debris raining down like dark confetti, the remaining crafts scattered, lights strobing, beams cutting wild. A voice thundered across the wind, amplified, in Narai's language first, then in English. "Stand down," the voice commanded, in a tone that felt like law itself. I froze on the walkway, staring, chest heaving. The new ship hovered above the turbines like a guardian, sleek, luminous, markings glowing along its side like living script. From its belly dropped several smaller units, fast, precise, defensive, forming a barrier between me and the traitor craft. One of the traitor ships tried to flee, and a beam of white light caught it, pinned it, dragged it down like a fish yanked from water. I heard another voice then, close, coming from a drone that hovered near the walkway. "Human," it said. "Do you carry the crown?" My hands tightened around the tiara. "Yes," I yelled. "Then hold it high," the voice said. "Let us see it." I lifted it, and the gemstones caught the pale light of the overcast sky. Glowing, undeniable, the drone drifted closer, scanning. Then the voice softened. "You did well, human." Below, the control room window was shattered, smoke drifting from it. I saw movement. Narai stepping out onto a platform, unsteady but alive. Her scarf torn, her hair wild, her face marked by exhaustion. She looked up at me. And for the first time since she appeared in my truck, she smiled without fear. Not a big smile, not a victory shout, just a small expression that said, "You did not leave me to be swallowed by the dark." A shuttle rose to meet her, steady, careful. And when she stepped aboard, she did not look away from me. The loyal ship hovered closer to the turbine tops, and a ramp extended toward my walkway. Two figures emerged, not armored like the traitors, but dressed in sleek uniforms with symbols that matched the tiara's blue light. Their faces visible, eyes focused, respectful. One of them bowed slightly and spoke in English. "Slow and careful, human, we owe you a debt." I swallowed hard, my hands shaking now that the immediate terror was easing. All I did was not stop. I said, and my voice cracked. "Not stopping is rare," the figure replied, "especially when the sky tells you to kneel." Narai's shuttle docked with the larger ship, and minutes later she stood at the edge of the ramp herself, swaying slightly, a queen with dirt on her clothes and fire in her eyes. She looked at the tiara in my hands, then at my face. "Give it to me," she said softly. I stepped forward and placed it in her hands. And when her fingers closed around it, the gemstones flared once, warm and steady, like they recognized their rightful owner. She set it on her head, and her posture changed instantly, not because the crown was magic, but because she had survived the attempt to erase her. She looked out at the scattered traitor craft being corralled, at the empty highway beyond, at my battered truck sitting in a fenced yard below like a wounded animal. Then she looked back at me. "You saved more than a queen today," she said. "You saved a war from spilling into your world unchecked." I let out a shaky breath, the kind that feels like you are finally allowed to be alive. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now," she said, her voice carrying, her eyes sharp. "Now they learn what happens when they underestimate a human who refuses to be afraid." The loyal guards around her nodded, and I realized they were watching me with something that felt like respect, but also something else, curiosity. The galaxy had just learned that a random truck driver on a lonely highway could change the outcome of a royal coup. Narai stepped closer, lowering her voice so only I could hear. "They will come again," she whispered. "Maybe not today. Maybe not for me, but for your world, because now they know you have teeth." My stomach tightened. "I did not ask for that," I said. "No one asks," she replied gently. And for a moment she looked tired in a way that made my chest ache. "Leadership arrives like a storm, not like a gift." She reached out, and to my surprise, she touched my shoulder, light and steady. "You have a courage that is not loud," she said. "It is stubborn, it is quiet, it is human." The word hit me differently this time, not small, not a label, a banner. Below, The loyal ship began broadcasting, sending signals out, not just into space, but into our networks, into our towers, into our skies. I could almost imagine phones across the region lighting up. Emergency alerts, shocked voices, people realizing the truth after it had already happened. Neri looked down at my truck, then back at me. I can repair what they broke. She said, your vehicle, your power station, even the memory scars they left on the highway. But I cannot repair the fact that you saw the stars look back. I swallowed. So what do? I asked. She smiled again, and this time it was warmer. You do what humans always do, she said. You tell the story, you warn the ones you love, you prepare. And when fear comes, you do not stop. A loud tremor ran through the air as the loyal ship fired one last beam, disabling the final traitor craft. The sky slowly began to feel like sky again. The wind turbines turned, steady, indifferent, like they had watched 1,000 storms and would watch 1,000 more. Neri stepped backward onto the ramp, then paused, her eyes holding mine. If the day comes when they return in greater numbers, she said, call my name into the dark, and I will answer. Then she turned, regal even in exhaustion, and walked into the ship. The ramp lifted, the ship rose, and the overcast clouds swallowed it like a secret. I stood on that turbine walkway with the wind in my face, staring at the empty stretch of highway where my ordinary life had been replaced by a universe that had just cracked open, and in my chest, under the fear, under the shock, under the disbelief, something stronger settled into place. A promise, whatever comes next, I will not stop.